Good evening. Israel in 2025 is not a headline, it's a pressure test. Pressure test of morality, of geopolitics, and of Jewish existence itself. One hostage body is still not home, which is a clear violation of the ceasefire. Israel is still fighting on multiple fronts, some visible, some deliberately obscured. And across the road, Jews are once again being told to explain themselves. Tonight, we are not here to chant slogans. We are here to talk reality. So stay with us for real insights. Good evening and welcome back to the Vitor podcast. Tonight we are doing something that has become strangely controversial, reviewing Israel in 2025 without apology and without propaganda. We are going to talk about the hostage, not as symbols, but as human beings. We are going to talk about the war with Iran and its proxies, not as a fantasy, but as a tangible threat. And we are going to talk about Jewish identity because something has shifted, whether people like it or not. And yes, we are also going to talk about anti-Semitism because pretending it is just criticism of Israel has become an intellectual fraud. Disagreement is welcome here. We are eager to have an open debate. So if you're looking for slogans, this is not your place. If you are looking for a thoughtful environment, don't go anywhere and stay with us. I'm not here alone. Thank God. I'm very proud of my panel with me tonight. I have Daniel Hose, who by now is already a star on this show. I have Anna Eyal, who joined us more recently for the Portuguese podcast, and whose voice I'm genuinely interested to have in these conversations going forward. And we have Dave Bender, a newcomer to the panel, but don't let that fool you. He brings sharp, powerful insights that cut through the noise very quickly. So this isn't a panel assembled for balanced theater. It's a panel assembled for clarity. So guys that are watching us, do your part, use the chat, comment, and questions matter here to have a real conversation. Share the stream, subscribe, and if you want to support serious conversations without filters, consider becoming a member and unlocking special perks. So enough of me talking. Let's bring in the guests and start this conversation. I will initiate with you, Dave, since you are a new addition to this panel. So let's kick off with the hostage. I would like to ask you, where do you think there is a fundamental difference between the hostage crisis in 2025 compared to the previous hostage situations that involve in Israel, say, in the previous years?
Well, it's significantly different since all but one hostage have been released, and it's just the body of the remaining hostage, Ram Gvili, and his parents are meeting in these very hours, with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu in Washington as they go into their summit. And it's a very dicey situation. I'd like to read something brief from a very astute writer, Mitch Schneider from Substack, and that's also where I comment. Hours before Trump sat down with Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago, Hamas released a video. The new spokesman wearing the red keffiyeh of his predecessors killed in August had a message for the President of the United States. We will not give up our weapons. And that, at this moment, is a slap in the face, as the author goes on, to Trump and Netanyahu, literally as they're going into their conclave. So it's a very, very tense time. And the other threats on other fronts, I'm here in northern Israel, in Safed. We are about, 15 kilometers from the Lebanese border, something equivalent to the Syrian border. We hear the jets, we hear the explosions. We have become under attack and rocket, drone, and cruise missile fire for over 2 years. And we have survived it, and we are thriving. But it has not been easy. And excuse me for having a bit of a cold here. Any questions you have on the back end, please toss them out to me. I will do my best to answer them accurately and quickly, and as quickly as I can.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. I have a comment here. Hello, Vitor, and hello, Daniel, and also hello, Dave, and hello, Hanya, and shalom to everyone on the panel. Regards, Salman. I'm very glad that you are watching us, Salman. You have been one of us for quite some time. So please use the chat box. It's there to make this conversation interactive and interesting and insightful. I move to you, Han. I'm very keen to understand, because I know you are quite interested in the psychological side of things. So how does this prolonged uncertainty on the hostages damage Israel?
Wow, that is a quite interesting question for me. With my psychology background, I've been saying for 2 years, I think we just got out of all the known research that we have about trauma and collective trauma. This is absolutely new field that is unfolding. On the same line, I say many times, it seems like we are still not aware of it, but we are probably going to lead a lot of research, certainly in psychology field ahead, because we are dealing with something that is quite undescribable, really. The hostages crisis has had an impact on Israel in many layers. First of all, the fact that it was all done in a way that was pretty much exposed to all of us through footage. So I think, like, if we compare to other crises, the way that this was shown to all of us, it adds an element of trauma. And I think this is an ongoing thing. I was just speaking with someone a few days ago in the context of the return of the hostages following the recent, not so much recent, but it still feels like that, of the return of the hostages. So there is now another layer of it, which is the interviews that are, anyone that is in Israel perhaps is more exposed, but we are almost on a weekly basis having voices of the hostages that adds a total new element, because it seems like we were just getting pieces of information and operating with our worst fears during the time of captivity, and hearing a little bit of the returned hostages sharing, but the feeling was we had to be very contained with the information that we were sharing while we were having alive hostages over there, because the sense of consequences, and it was always very much complicated. And I think now there is a new layer, because they are just speaking up and they are sharing their experience. And this adds quite of a transition from the fear-based fantasy or worst fears, nightmares that we were building up inside our brain, but quite wanting to believe that maybe there's going to be different narratives that can build some type of sense of humanity in all this. And sadly, this is not happening. I can speak for myself as a woman. The whole element of the sexual violence, it has been extremely complicated to digest. So the layers of trauma here on a collective scale for all Israelis, and I think for all the Jewish world, and perhaps it reaches even the friends of the Jewish people and of Israel, I think it has a lot of complicated elements for all of us that it's still ongoing. This sense also of the lack of beginning and end. I remember that it was so difficult for me, the sense of I was waiting so much to see the hostages back, to have a sense of closure. And then it seems like this closure is not really coming, because now there's another new stage, which is let's hear what they have to tell. Let's understand their experiences, to understand what actually we have on these neighbors that we just got aware of, this attack that crushed so many ideas we had about the possibilities of peace and coexistence. And now we are just processing. So yeah, we cannot fully breathe. I think it's still very much complicated. And I think the other element that needs to be spoken is, the closure is not happening while we still have a family that is waiting for this closure, which adds this element of we cannot really connect with the sense of everyone came back because they were alive and they came back, but there is a family that it's still waiting. The closure is not achieved.
Let me move to Daniel Hoss on this incident. So Daniel Hoss, he moved out about a year ago. He was in Israel when the 7th of October happened. He is now based in Portugal. So I would like to ask you whether you believe that this, or to what extent this hostage issue has been weaponized from a political point of view. Is it? And I would like to ask not only in Israel but abroad.
I think, and excuse me again for my cough. I think it's definitely been weaponized. You hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, these were not civilians. These were soldiers. These were this." Anything they can to delegitimize the hostages. Anything they can to delegitimize women's voices. I mean, as we hear again, "Oh, all women are supposed to believe," but again, not if you're an Israeli woman, not if you're a Jewish woman. All victims of rape are supposed to be believed. All this and that is supposed to be believed. But again, not Jews, not Israelis, not this, not that. It's upsetting, because you see how people you would think who could have at least a little bit of respect just weaponize your just sorrow and weaponize your hurt against you, and then contacts this. They make every excuse to kind of legitimize everything, every excuse, which is hard. Whether it's you as you go onto the streets in Porto and you see the graffiti, or you see things online in RTP or in Espresso or in other online pages of major newspapers or TV stations or media. They just don't get it. There is very much a kind of cut off from the reality on the ground. The majority of I think a lot of people just don't get if you don't live there, if you haven't been there, if you haven't understood kind of how life is on the ground. And majority of these people just believe that they know everything without ever having stepped foot on the ground.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of misconception which is generated on social media. We all know that people are suffering from attention span, and there's a lot of agents out there trying to manipulate our minds using all sorts of mechanisms. I think social media is the tool number one. I put a poll for the viewers, and the question was, what defines Israel in 25 most? So there are four approaches, four choices: the hostage crisis, the war with Iran, Jewish identity revival, and media anti-Semitism. At the moment, 2 people said media anti-Semitism, and 1 highlighted Jewish identity revival. So we're going to revisit this poll later on. Please use it, because I think there's a lot to understand from your input. So please use it, and we will discuss it, the 4 of us, later on. I would like just to touch base on the hostage topic a bit more, and because it seems to me that the hostage didn't get the same attention that the Gazans did over the last couple of years. They were treated like they were a different species. And I would like to try to brainstorm, the 4 of us, why the international focus has not only faded around the hostage, but shifted to the suffering in Gaza, which is undeniable. We are not here saying that there is no pain and misery in Gaza. Yes, there is. But probably it's not just Israel to blame. There are some other people in Gaza who are making Gazans' life terrible. So would you like to try to explore this, Dave? Why the shift of attention was the focus of attention shifted from the hostage to the Gazans in a blink of an eye?
I would like to address that actually. I think it's part of my very personal processing of all the experience. And I think if I look back, it actually goes back to the 8th, 9th of October. If we think about it, much before it was any suffering in Gaza going on, we immediately saw a response that I remember to have this sense of when the 7th of October was happening and I was getting the dimension of what was actually going on. I actually had a sense of that I felt very guilty about to make this internal connection, but a sense of like, oh, this is so horrible and so devastating, and it could have been me, and I can't believe this is happening, and how is this going to progress, and all these layers. And then on the parallel, I got this sense, oh wait, but there is here an opportunity for the world finally getting what we are dealing with. Excuse me, we are all dealing with winter. And I think the challenge
That's what I'm
for me,
drinking.
yeah, we can like all offer. Actually, I'll take my water. Thank you very much.
Your Devise with limon. That's what I would definitely do.
Anyway, but I think like for me, the sense of awkwardness, it actually happens straight away. The lack of immediate response of people, it took me a lot of time to understand this. I think I had to go through the war and start to see the way things evolved, and the attempt we have to actually highlight it's about children and innocent children and the Bibas family pictures and all of it. Nothing seemed to wake up people on a more global scale. And now I look back and I realize that people were just actually assuming perhaps we deserve it.
Can I respond to that?
Perhaps the background of the war was much more. So there was a sense of like feeling of people in that region have complicated things going on. So that's it. This is just like a part of it. So I think they just framed all the event perhaps with other contexts of other previous wars and the people are just desensitized in a way to connect themselves to the extent of what actually happened in that day, in a way that there is a huge gap between, I think, the awareness of people of what actually happened on outside of Israel or outside of some type of connection. And I can speak about it on a very personal level. I came to Israel, I made my Aliyah in the age of 25. All my life, all my friend of my background is back in Portugal. I was astounded up until today to the way that most people that know me react to it. And I end up being in Portugal and being very vocal. And I was actually straight away on the 8th of October or 9th, I was already in the television telling the story of how I arrived and speaking up for Israel and speaking up for the hostages, making events around the hostages. And the silence was just too much to cope. And
where were you when the war started?
Up until now, it's up until now. Most people were not. It seems like they just did not have an emotional reaction to it, or they were not willing to share that they had. It's very, very difficult to combine the awareness I have as an Israeli person, and let's say it very clearly. I literally felt it could have been me. Any Israeli felt that day. There's no difference. I see that mother and those children. I see my daughters. I know that it could have been me. So this awareness, together with a sense of lack of response, lack of emotional connection to this on a more collective way, it's just something that I still can't comprehend.
Dave, I think you wanted to jump in here, Dave, so please.
Yeah, I did actually. A couple of points that you mentioned, and going back just really briefly, when the hostages were first being released in the first tranches of hostage releases, they were kept very far away from the public, and the presumption was with healthcare and other social services, they needed to be cocooned away from society because it would be too harsh, too loud, too annoying. They needed to be alone. It turns out over time, not only is it being dripped out now, it's because by design, they want to tell their stories, and it's taken a year for many of them. Like Royi has been coming up, and a man who said he was raped numerous times. They have to share their pain, and it's like ripping open a Band-Aid that you thought had healed underneath, and to realize that the wound is still there and it is still wet, and the pain is so real. And I'll speak about myself for a moment, if I may. I've lived in Israel about 40 years. I've been a journalist for about 30 of them. I've worked for National Public Radio in America. I've worked for numerous news outlets in Israel. And I also, after the IDF, I was in Gaza, but not now. I've also been involved as the security chief for our village where I was living previous to Tzfat, nearby, in the ops room. And I was working hand in glove with the Home Front Command while we were under intense rocket fire, thousands of rockets, drones, line of sight anti-tank rockets, cruise missiles, and then the Iranians in June. And what we were going through, especially in the north, the south got all the attention from the world media. What was happening in the north was like kind of off on the side. Oh yeah, there's a little bit of border tension. And it's like 80 plus, between 80 and 100,000, depends how you decide who's a refugee, were internally displaced refugees from the entire north of Israel. The Israeli army made a policy that will pull them back, put them up at government expense, which caused its own arguments. Like, where do you draw the line? 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers? And so there's a lot of internal dissent about that. And whole communities were decimated. And I can speak to my experience on October 7th. I'm observant. I live in Tzfat. At the time, I was living in a nearby village, Kfar Hanania, as the security chief there. And the security chief came up to me, my superior, and said, a catastrophe is going on. And we were all shocked. We did not know how to process it. To this day, when I talk about it, it gets very incoherent because it was so traumatic for all of us. And we've spent the last 2 years processing that trauma. And while it isn't as gory and it isn't as dramatic as all the AI videos out of Gaza and showing the damage is real, but
Absolutely.
This is our experience that's been completely underreported, completely under paid attention to. And I've lost friends, I've lost family members who support Hezbollah and Hamas in both cases. Or they think, well, you can't be telling all the truth. You must be a propagandist and all the rest of that stuff. It's debilitating, and you've got to you have to have thick skin, but you don't have to have skin that's so thick that you can't react emotionally and psychologically to the difficulties of it.
Yeah. Often here in Ireland, when I mention the situation in Israel, people what I tend to get is a yes, but. It's like, yes, but. Things are harsh over there, but you know what the Israelis did in the past, so they are just getting back. So they're not stating with all the words that the Israelis deserved, but somehow they are. They are just not
It
brave
didn't
enough to
start on
say it
October 7th.
out loud. Yes.
It started in
But, this-
48. It started in the Balfour Declaration. There's always that. And personally, as someone who's been online for many years in this field, both as a professional reporter and as a commentator, now that I'm retired, I just walk away from it. You cannot, to engage with these kind of debates is like turning your pockets out and saying, I'm innocent. Look, I can prove it. Cherry tomatoes, ways, medical advances. And they're saying, no, you're monsters and murderers and you deserve to die. There's an imbalance there when you say, look, we do everything we can. I was in Gaza. I served in reserve duty in Gaza several times. It's nothing like what I'm a liar. I'm a genocider. And then you're off to the races. And personally, I find a space like this here with you folks very comforting, but a little bit almost constricting because you can't talk to anyone outside of the bubble, outside of the conceptual idea that either you're killers and murderers and spawns of Satan, or for people who support Israel, you're perfect. And I'm here to say, no, we're not. I've been a reporter in Israel for the last 40 years. And we got lots of problems like any other country on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
But this,
and that's why they've sorry to cut you off.
Focus is so difficult.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to bring you in, because we are not here just being partisans. We are trying to understand the reality. We are not just picking sides just to be part of a team or a tribe. We are trying to understand facts as they are. So if we need to call out Israel, we will. If we need to call out the mainstream media, we will. We are here to tell the truth, or at least how we perceive it. We might have our bias because we are all human beings at the end of the day, but we try to understand the reality and explain to the best of our ability without being in the Qatari paycheck. Daniel, I want to express again my big gratitude, because when I was in Israel in June, you were very supportive of me, trying to tell me what I should do, what were the procedures, because it was the first time that I was caught in a war situation, and you were sending me message, I don't know, maybe every hour. So I want to say thank you very much again. But let's get into that topic, to the war with Iran, which broke out in June. And I know there were precedents, but there were further steps being taken in June. Do you think it was? Would you call it an escalation, or do you think Israel was exposed to a threat that they couldn't handle it anymore? And the only way to move forward was actually to go after the Iranian regime.
I think I wouldn't call it an escalation. I wouldn't call it a threat that we were forced to kind of, just go after. I think we've always gone after it, no matter what. This was just an idea, I think, where, you could not continually say, okay, Iran is not going to be able to have weapons. We can't allow them to have weapons. We can't allow them to. If they're going to believe or not believe wherever they are at whatever point they are, there's going to be a point of no return. I think they just felt maybe we were getting close to the point of no return, where if they are continually allowed to have weapons, if they're continually again, it's not about the Iranian people. This is 100% about the regime. We have no problem with the Iranian people. I have a lot of Iranian friends who I get along with. They're like, oh, I'd love to visit. I'd love to this. So this is all about kind of the regime, and the regime not just puts itself at danger or its people at danger. They put the entire Middle East, the entire world at danger by the continuous proxy wars that they do. The idea of the nuclear weapons is just one facet of it. But I do believe that maybe we just did come to a point where we just said, okay, enough, khalas, like enough. And okay, we're just going to end this once and for all. And it wasn't that we didn't suffer. There were a lot of people that suffered direct hits. I know of one person I know who had a direct hit to their home, to their business, and the stuff. And I have a friend whose parents' home was also directly hit during the war. So it wasn't something that people were like, oh, well, you have the Iron Dome and things didn't happen. People
stop complaining.
People were fine.
You're safe.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to kind of sometimes just shake your head at how people would just delegitimize and be like, well, you have the Iron Dome, you guys are safe. I'm like, it's not 100% foolproof. People do die when, it's not going to be 100% perfect. Imagine if we didn't have the Iron Dome, we would have been in a much worse space. I mean, imagine Shterot 10, 15 years ago. Imagine Ashkelon 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I covered those stories.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, Dave. I mean, Hannah, you know exactly like as well. Like
I was just remembering to give to add a little bit to what Dave was saying. There's so much to unpack with our personal experiences and what we have been dealing with. So during the Iran attack, like I just have this memory of I was speaking with my mother-in-law that lives in the Haifa area. So there was an alarm. So I'm more in the center. We were being in touch. Like she was trying to understand if I was connected. I was not. There was just like crazy explosion. So there was a direct hit in the house next to hers.
No.
So she was hysterical, although she was inside the protective room. But yeah, it was just coming out and see the house next to her completely destroyed. There were kids inside alone. A 14-year-old girl with her 8-year-old the mother just went out to the supermarket. So yeah, those are real stories that we just like feel. I think people have no idea when they just say, yeah, you have the Iron Dome and you are so lucky. It's really.
Why don't the Gazans have Iron Dome?
Yeah, they've got them. Let all that aid money that they're getting be built for protected space.
They could have with the amount of financing that they got and where they took to prioritize it. But anyway. But I think one aspect that is very important to understand, is the Israeli experience is extremely much more complicated, and Dave perhaps can explore that much better than me. But the whole way media is built up, somehow we became less interesting. Our stories are not to be told, so people have no idea of what actually means to be. I just had another memory, this whole story of being a mother and going out with I remember to be calculating, can I actually go out with my 8 years old and my 4 years old and also my 10 years old? Because if it happens something, how can I? If I'm going to the park, I'm calculating, wait, should I go to the park? Because do I have enough space to run the whole way? Dave was just describing. The impact is, we are a nation with a nervous system on spikes. This is true. We are actually, there is an impact, in our bodies. I actually believe we need a national, exactly like we have front command. We need front command for the nervous system to teach us all actually strategies that I'm feel very privileged to have access to this. But how to calm down the nervous system after this whole experiences, which is really spikes of adrenaline that puts us in a sense of vigilance.
Cortisone, adrenaline.
This whole idea that, you have Iron Dome, you are great. There's nothing happening. People have no idea. It
also works on the other side for people who are really pro-Israel. They say, but you have Iron Dome. What are you complaining about? It's like, no, you don't understand. One, it doesn't always work. Two, we're living under sustained, intense rocket fire. I can speak about my children, my grandchildren in Sfat, driving. I wrote lots of stories on my Substack page, driving to IKEA, coming onto rocket attack on the drive there in IKEA, driving back. And I wrote it with like a sense of humor, right? Because if you took it seriously, you'd go, what are you out of your mind? How can you live with that?
Yeah.
We
And I
do.
was
But even
just thinking about
as a
it.
visitor, let me just tell you something, guys. As a visitor, I was in Israel in June, and then as I said, the war broke out with Iran, and some people said, "But you knew it that it's Israel. There could be an escalation all the time." So they start to point fingers on me that I put myself in a situation of danger. If something goes wrong, it's my fault. So I shouldn't ask for insurance, anything. I was guilty to travel to Israel at that time. And on top of that, because I end up talking about to the Portuguese media, the national TV, and some important radios. On top of that, people even said that I was chasing media coverage. It's insane. And they don't know that my whole intent of going to Israel was to meet friends and also to do a couple of cultural events. One would be my top cultural event ever in my career as author. I would be giving a talk on an Irish institute in Netanya. That would be like the cherry in the top of the cake. And that didn't happen. If I would have to think between talking to the Portuguese TV, which was great, was a great opportunity to share facts, 100%, or giving that talk at the Irish Institute, I would go for the latter without a shadow of a doubt. So before people making statements, maybe they need to know a bit better the background of the trip, of the person, and etc. Otherwise, they're going to look like fools. Sorry, I had to share that because it's still in my blood. It's not going to go away any soon. There's a question here that I would like to address from Salman. Nick Fuentes, that bright mind called Nick Fuentes, recycled medieval anti-Semitic tropes, justified 2090 explosion, and blamed Jews for the Great Fire of London. It's Nick Fuentes, but do you think we are advancing a political ideology, or they are just exploiting a timeless psychology? Who wants to pick that? Maybe Dave?
I don't even know where to begin with this. I've lived in Israel over 40 years, and when I see this three-ring circus that is America, let alone England or the UK or Ireland or elsewhere, what's happening in Europe, I find it hard to take it serious. And I understand it's deadly serious. It's deadly, like in lethally deadly serious. But any human being with like a puppy dog's, brain takes a lunatic like this even seriously? Why isn't he laughed off every stage? Why isn't he mobbed by people shoving him into traffic? I don't understand. Why is he all of a sudden being feted in the media, whether it's because of Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or all the rest of that whole rat pack?
Yeah.
And I look at it from here. I haven't been back in the States in 15 years. And when I was there, I was a national public radio reporter. And it's like looking at it just through strictly reporters' eyes, who, what, where, why, when, how. These guys are lunatic, fringe, and who's even giving them a microphone? And now all of a sudden, it's mainstream. It's all good. We're just asking questions, as they say.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Just want to say there's a permission to be lunatic if your lunacy is towards Jewish people, whether you're on the far right or on the far left. Then you have green light that you can open your mouth and say a lot of nonsense, and you might be even clapped. I just want to redraw the attention to the viewers that there is a poll open. What defines Israel in 25 most? At the moment, no one pointed out the hostage crisis, but one said the war with Iran, and two mentioned Jewish identity revival, and two mentioned media and anti-Semitism. The poll is open. We will discuss the results down the road. And now let's move to we already talked about the media and narrative and perception. I would like to ask you, do you think, so Israel unfortunately is losing the narrative war. Do you think Israel just walk away from it because Israel understood that there's not much intelligence on it, or they are trying to rebuild the strategy and see if they can win in the next couple of years?
I would like to address this. I think there was a bit of a problem here, I think, of actually realizing the extent of the problem in terms of pretty much the BDS movement and the pro-Palestinian movement extent, especially in universities. I remember back in the day in 2014, there is this event that happens every year that is hosted by the Ministry of External Affairs. So usually they make an event every year to actually make kind of a diagnosis of the status of anti-Semitism. And I was present in 2014, and I remember to feel extremely excited for the whole focus that it was back then in the movements that were being established in American universities to delegitimize Israel. And there were many people attending that came actually from the US to give us a picture. And I remember I got materials, and I actually got this sense of Israel is really understanding what is happening. So we are going to know how to tackle this, and it's going to be great. And the feeling I get actually seeing the whole explosion of the pro-Palestinian movement immediately after the October 7, it feels like, they caught us by surprise. We weren't really expecting, I think, such a clear link between this type of activism that was seeming like extremely intellectual and sort of having some boundaries with terrorism on the ground that actually kills people. And I want to actually point this connection because I felt it in a very unexpected way that I think perhaps Victor might connect with me much better than old Dave or Daniel. I was just in Portugal, and pro-Palestinian activism in Portugal, what's that? Let's just say it, right? 2023, I was not expecting it, to see it 8th of October, 9th of October, a full-blown, really going to the streets. I remember actually this contrast of being on the line with my family and realizing that I had a cousin that went to Sderot and was still, I was trying to understand if she went out. And the daughter of my neighbor next door that was in the Nova party, and we were trying to understand, Zirona Lebracha, she passed away. So, this contrast of all of us actually processing the event, literally still having the blood of our people to be bodies to identify, the process that it was for us to actually identify bodies on the parallel in the Western world. People were ready. People were too fast ready. And this is something that I think like we are just now step by step starting to address and unfold. And it seems like only us, the Jewish people, have to do it because no one actually asked questions and reacted to it. Because again, I will say the but that always came perhaps made people not interested in asking questions. But this contrast was extremely clear for me, especially in the Portuguese context, because I was not able to do nothing more than be on the phone and being total trauma, understanding what is up 8th of October, 9th of October. And in the meantime, I was seeing already friends of friends of friends posting online. Let's go to Lisbon to the street, pro-Palestine movement. Let's pay for transportation for people coming from all corners of Portugal so that they can reach to Lisbon. And I was like, where does all this comes from? Where is this organization coming from? So it felt extremely odd, extremely confusing, actually. I couldn't understand. And now I think with this perspective of what we are seeing, and we are seeing it coming out with a kind of a slow rhythm, but I think step by step we are starting to get it, that there was here a very clear organization. And I would like actually to address, because I think this is a very, in my opinion, a very interesting point that just closed the year and perhaps is going to open a new page, hopefully, for our clatter in this sense. 2 days ago, Italian anti-terrorism units and the finance police arrested 9 individuals in an operation that Prime Minister Meloni said lifted the veil on dangerous activities hidden behind pro-Palestinian initiatives. And one of this person, which is very interesting, the primary arrest, Mohammed Hanoun, was the president of the Palestinian Association in Italy, literally having the whole pro-Palestinian activism in Italy. Prosecutors have officially designated him as the head of the Italian cell of Hamas, because it was just discovered that this cell was working in cooperation with NGOs, local Italian NGOs, and we're speaking about 7 million that was raised for humanitarian aid directly going to Hamas military wing and families of terrorists. So basically this whole situation, I'm speaking about something that happened 2 days ago. So I'm assuming and expecting, and hopefully we are going to see this expanding a whole new layer of Western societies to look very, very, very attentively to what has been these movements. But basically this link between the terrorism on the ground that has this impact that is so devastating, taking out lives, creating trauma for a whole country. We're speaking about it very openly, but now we have here this very clear connection with this activism that is called the pro-Palestinian activism in Western societies that needs to be discussed. And I think this Italian just recently released piece of news says a lot, especially if we consider, I think we should take this in consideration, the connection between these financial operatives like this Mohammed Hanoun that is like heading the pro-Palestinian activism, and high-profile activists like Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
Needs to be said. This is exposing how the West is actually financing terror loop, and the logistics and the branding is very, very clear. We have a figure that is a key organizer of the Gaza flotillas that took over. I will speak again from the Portuguese perspective. This actually took over totally the media scene, and we are now seeing that basically this Hanoun person that was just arrested, confirmed to be tied so closely to Hamas, was behind these flotillas, using faces of personalities, and we can even speak about quite known people that have a reach that who are we, the Jewish people, 0.2% of the world population, next to the reach that these people have in social media, and they are there giving the face to very complex systems that are literally financing terrorism. And this is something that, in my view, needs to be, let's say, the foundation for the hope we have for the next coming year of other Western countries actually addressing this type of concerns and starting to look very deeply into what's going on, these so-called NGOs attempting to get funding for helping Gaza, but what is actually happening? By the way, you already know that there was a system of actually passing money through Turkey, other organizations, and then in this way the money somehow was reaching the end goal. And of course, we have now also Greta that was in the news, was arrested in London also because of association with Palestine Action, which is another group that the UK government actually officially prescribed as a terrorist organization. So it seems like we are starting to get somewhere. And this tells us that, there was here a lot of intention to combine the whole situation on the ground that Israel had to handle militarily, to the hostage crisis, to contain this threat of terror, and that on the parallel, there was a whole system functioning to delegitimize Israel and put a question in pretty much everything that we do with intention. And I think I think another aspect that many people don't speak about, which kind of pop up in my mind when I was describing my more personal connection to all this, and I also felt the same with Dave when he was describing his, when we are dealing with actually true vulnerability, this is the name of death and the hurt, and let's say it, blood, mutilations, and all this, we have a different standard. We will never expose, which is another thing that people don't understand. I even the footage that was exposed out, it was coming from Hamas, because any person in Israel was so cautious, because we have a different standard, a moral standard, which is something that I don't think exists at all on the other side. And I always say this, just this question should raise so many red flags. The way those children are being exposed without any privacy, any confidentiality, nothing. They are just puppets to a machine of propaganda. We are extremely cautious. I will never allow my daughters' faces to be exposed in any scenario to prove any narrative like this. And I assume if anyone in Israel would want to do it, they will probably ask me. This is not something will be. So there is here a type of a boundary that immediately on the let go, it shows that we are in total different fields. And this is something that, in this scenario, we are also losing a bit of, it's not just about the narrative, it's about also the boundaries. There are different fields. We are in the field of protecting life, in the field of honoring people's rights, in the field of protecting privacy, everything that I think any Western mind might understand. And on the parallel, we have a complete different reality of just even not just showing what it is, because there is suffering, but there's also an intention to show it. And in a way, the boundaries are also not being kept. So, and we all know how images are being faked. So
you raise a very interesting point, Hannah, that we are using logic and they are using emotion. But unfortunately, emotion is much more effective when it comes to winning the war of communication, because people will fall for image and don't have the time or the nerves to go through text or even to analyze, because that takes a lot of time, brain cells, which many don't have, which I think is a big issue these days. Daniel, I think you wanted to jump in here.
No, I mean, I agree with both of these people. I agree with Dave. I agree with Hannah. I mean, we all experienced it. Whether we're talking recently when the hostages are released, we see everything on Ufta with Alana Dayan. I mean, or whether we're seeing clips in other news sources, or whether, for example, our experiences on the 7th. I mean, as I always say, living in a kibbutz near Tel Nov, not so far from the border with the South, knowing people living in the South itself, knowing my father's best friend as a child in high school, Oded Lifshitz, knowing that, having worked in Netivot and Shterot as a teacher, and seeing how this is just their life, where they don't even think, okay, their miklat, their mamad is like a normal room, and if they have to shut it, they'll just shut it. But just remembering, for example, even on the 7th, waking up at 6:30 in the morning and thinking, okay, something doesn't feel right, and then a few minutes later, it's just Tseva Adom, and getting. We like to say that we do not share this. We do not maybe share the extremely gory stuff, but I definitely do remember, like, in the beginning, when we were waiting for news and people were sending things. I remember even seeing a video of the aftermath of somebody I knew in their car, with being shot in the head and their head on the steering wheel. I remember seeing all of the gory things. I mean, we are doing maybe not the best job, for ourselves, because we don't want to show people this or show people that. But there are sites that I think the Foreign Ministry has set up for people abroad that people in Israel actually cannot see. I think what it's like called October 7th. I forget that's something. It's something like that.
The IP address from Israel. It's only
Exactly.
viewable.
The IP address is banned from Israel. But I think we are losing the war because of popular opinion in the media, because we did not focus. Why are we getting all of these influences and all of these people who were not here on the 7th of October, who have no idea of what it is on the ground? Some, okay, and don't get me wrong, we're all from somewhere else, but some American or some this or some that or someone from wherever who has never lived here, has never spent like time here, doesn't know, can't give you any sort of understanding of how it actually was from our points. And then on the other hand, you have in places like Portugal, you have the Bloco Discorda, you have people like Anna, you have people like Miss Martin in the amazing Bloco Discorda. Again, I'm being sarcastic, of course, who have, again, no idea, but think that their politics are the creme de la creme of everything. And it makes me sick. Like, I see it sometimes that I just want to tell them, you don't want to be violent, but sometimes you just want to go knock on the head here, maybe get some common sense. Like, they don't understand because they refuse to listen to a person who actually has on the ground experience, because they're biased, they're this, they're that, they're whatever. What do you know if you've never really been on the ground? What do you know if you haven't really experienced anything?
If I can step in here, just two things there. One, right, you can. I've told people in America, relatives in America, I've worked very closely with the press here and the army, and I know a few things you may want to know about the circumstances that you're not seeing in the news there. Simply, and I'm a relative, I'm a cousin, and no, the what's the word I'm looking for? The cognitive dissonance
100%
is just stupefying. How much they don't want to know. There's something else you also said about that Israel is losing the PR war. First off, I think Israel is doing the best under impossible circumstances. There are billions of dollars, billions upon billions of dollars being poured into the information warfare against Israel and Jews. And the paperwork, the exact documentation, firsthand paperwork, I saw it with my own eyes, from Iran, paying these groups that you were both talking about. October 8th, all of a sudden, where did these riots come from? Where did all this money come from? Where did the signs come from? Where did all of the paraphernalia? And it was paid for, and it was planned. And Israel had enough with a 7-front war in real time that we lived on our flesh and blood. We didn't have exactly all the wherewithal, although there were blunders, true, to deal with a tsunami of anti-Israel hatred on 4 continents, throughout Europe, throughout the United States, throughout Canada, Australia, the whole gas the Jews thing, and it was culminated in the Bondi Beach killings. But I'm going to point something out here also that I wrote about on my Substack page, and I found the article from August. Briefly, I talk about all the AI cake fails, quote unquote, the 3-legged amputee, the toddler filter mishaps, the snow in Gaza now that everyone's seeing and raining people up to the neck. It's bad enough as it is. The reality is bad enough, but they brought it on themselves. That's how I take it now. Roll your eyes and chalk it up to Pallywood with a GPU. But here's the danger. Propaganda doesn't need technical finesse. It only needs to hijack the amygdala, your brain's panic button. Fear, disgust, outrage. Once these emotions are triggered, logic never catches up. This is me writing. What you dismiss as a bad joke today, because they're so bad at propaganda. Look at those bad AI fails. It'll be weaponized for tomorrow's evidence of atrocities. And I think we refuse to understand it because we believe in a logical, sensible world where proof has to be real proof. And I'm saying that vast, gigantic swaths of humanity would prefer the emotional, hit the button to be charged like that than any truth. And it's like the dissonance here is like echoing off the rings of Saturn by now. And the response even to this, when you point it out, saying, these are all, you understand this is all AI slop, as it's called. And the response would inevitably be, the Gazans have nothing left to fight with besides the media and AI to share the destruction at the brutal hands of the satanic genocidal Israeli death machine. How dare you mock them for getting the bigger picture of their plight out to the world, even if it's poorly done.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't win against an argument like that. So Dave, for one person who's been active in this for years, someone said two things. One, I'm going into 2026 saying, you're right. Goodbye. And essentially, I'm done. I will not engage with people like this because they are light years beyond reasonable discussion and thoughtfulness. To them, you're a cipher, you're an image, you're a placeholder for their feelings of noble, virtuous victimization. And that's a mentality that has so overtaken the West, where being the victim is considered noble and being the warrior or the hero is considered the horrific war machine part. I don't know any way to do that, even ground roots. And we've been doing it for years on Life on the Border, the Facebook group that I run with Adele. And sometimes you find yourself talking to a very small group of people because everyone else is not listening to you. They're screaming at you, spittle-flecked, raging at you.
Yes.
And there's nothing sensible or calming that you can do with someone like that. And that's where I think we are nowadays. And that's not very encouraging, but it is, I think, a clear-eyed view of the circumstances. We may be on our own, but we've been on our own before and prevailed.
Yeah, I often hear from people that, don't get me wrong, I'm with the Jewish people when it comes to what happened in the 30s and the 40s. But now Israel is doing the same or replicating the Holocaust towards the Gazans. So they try to look somehow pretty because they are not being biased, just trying to say, I'm not totally anti-Jewish. Just I was with you guys in the 30s and the 40s. As things have changed, so I'm not a bad person. But that's not how you approach things. You need to approach facts. You just don't wear a jersey. You encounter a situation, put some reason, forget about all the misinformation out there, and make your own conclusions. You may be wrong. That's fine. But at least take the time to think and come up with your own understanding.
Yeah, they try to legitimize their feelings. They're trying to legitimize. Okay, I'm not a hater. I'm not a this. I was with you this before, but now I can't be. And then you just ask them. It's like, well, on October 8th, October 9th, what was happening? How did these protesters get out? As we were saying before, follow the money. Where did the money come from to fund these protests? Was it Iran? Was it other things? Was it this? Was it Qatar? I have much of people that I would have thought were friends were somewhat maybe, and I wasn't naive about it. I knew that they were not, maybe the friendliest of friendly, but I didn't think they would go and be so deranged. And these are people who, were on visas or, were immigrants to the States. It's like, these types of people, these crazy people who are celebrating, it was not, an organic thing. And we just really need to kind of go and get down to the bottom of it. Just like they want to say, oh, well, you're a patrol, you're this, like whatever. But okay, so in the same sense, follow the money, where these protests were supported from, how they knew everything was going to happen so fast. It's, people in America knew, SJP, Muslim Brotherhood, whatever. They knew it was going to happen. That's how we had all these non-spontaneous protests, because they knew it was going to happen. And as we were still fighting even terrorists, you were having, let's plan for the next day, there's going to be a protest. As people were still even dying, there were still people being held hostage, at the time. There was maybe 23, 40, 30-something hours or whatever, so many hours after the initial attacks, people were still being held hostage. And you are saying, let's go celebrate? Shame on you.
Yeah, let me move to the next topic because we're already above beyond 60 minutes. I would like to talk about the Jewish identity revival, which is something someone brought up recently. I think it's an interesting exploring, because I think we know that Israel is not always compact as a society, and it's actually not a bad thing. That's I would say it's a sign of democracy, that people can have their own opinions and discuss it openly in the public sphere. But from my own understanding, I think that there is a Jewish revival increasing more and more, and it's probably a reaction to the backlash. And is it happening across the whole Israeli society, or if it is also impacting the diaspora communities? Maybe I start with Hannah on this.
Well, I'm very passionate about Jewish identity. It's something that for me, it was actually my own process of getting into it and building my Jewish identity in the middle of my life. So I actually love to look at it, and certainly we are in the middle of something that is happening. You know, I think looking back to 2025, it feels like we just like graduated from this emergency mode we were with our identities in 2024, of like we are just being attacked in our identity and what do we do with it, and we were all just together, all of us in shock. And I think in a way we are advancing to a much better unity, that it's much deeper and gets us intentional, but honestly is also very much complicated. And I think it's complicated because of internal dynamics that happen inside the Jewish family, let's call it like this, and also because on the parallel we are dealing always with outside dynamics of haters and what I called also previously these bystanders that are shocking us with their silence. I think generally we are moving to something. This is for sure. I think one aspect that needs to be spoken a lot about, that it's a bit connecting with what I spoke in the beginning about the dealing with the trauma, the experiences that we have of hearing the hostages' accounts of what was their own experience, and this I think has have a collective impact in our Jewish identity, because there is a common theme that all of us connect with, which is, if I'm actually being targeted because I am a Jew, what is about it? What is this all about? And I think the return of the hostages telling us that pretty much all of them in this situation of actually losing everything, they understood very well that they were there because they were Jewish. And this is trauma revival for all of us, because we've been here, right? It's an experience that I think it's very Jewish, this sense of I'm being targeted for my Judaism. I think the whole thing here is there is a connection now with the freedom of Zionism, although in this day everything was questioned in the 7th of October, but ultimately Israel is supposed to be the place where finally we can be free in our Judaism, and it's still being displaced. God bless the IDF, I must say. And yeah, I think in that dynamic, there's a lot going on. So we don't know specific numbers, but we do know with certainty that data is showing a significant rise in engagement with Judaism on a more observant way. Chabad, I think, recently reported that there is a largely driven by secular Jews, if we can call them like this, that are seeking some type of closeness. And in Israel, we also see it. I hear some accounts here and there, but I also hear generally being described that young people especially are reporting increasing their Jewish practices, lighting candles, keeping Shabbat, filling, all those things are being seen, which doesn't mean that people are becoming religious in the sense of it, but there is a search of a kind of a connection back with this like sense of Judaism. And I think in the diaspora, we see it from a space of suddenly the Star of David necklace is not just a fashion thing, or something that I just put on. Am I in danger for taking it out? Should I hide it? I experienced this as being abroad with my daughters. I always say, right now my whole thing is, if I am alone, my Star of David is out. If I have my girls around and I think I might be putting us all in a mess and I don't know how to deal, I might put it in. So this is things, let's just say it, for the non-Jewish audience that might be listening to us, those are things that we are dealing with. And this is Jewish identity as clear as it is. Any signs of external looking Jewish for us has today a whole different way of being managed. We don't know if are we in danger, and I think we just mentioned it very briefly, but I think this attack that happened in Sydney, it also has a huge impact in the general feeling. Although anti-Semitism is rising everywhere, we know it, and there are events, and we inside, I call it the Jewish bubble, we see it all the time, people being attacked in the Western world here and there with more like, say, targeted with 1%, 2% that are experiencing anti-Semitism that gets into violence, and there is a sense of security that the Jewish places need to set in. I'm now speaking with Daniel, he probably knows about it. The synagogue of Porto, from the 9th of October, we have police in the entrance because there was a graffiti in the synagogue. So these all experiences are clear. I think the Bondi Beach attack is a whole new layer because it was a very targeted Jewish celebration situation, and it was clear there that there was intention, and it's to target the Jewish community, and there was the whole. So it's real for us. So we are all experiencing. I think if we talk about Jewish identity, another layer that we have to speak about, which I must say, on a personal note, I think it's the first time ever that I'm speaking about it publicly, and I actually thought about it a lot if this should be the setting, but as Dave said, it feels comforting to be over here. We have to speak in the elephant in the room in Israel right now, which is, I think it is the main point of Jewish identity right now, which is the draft law. I think for decades there's been this, I used to call it this hierarchy of identity in the background, kind of. It felt like halacha, the Jewish law, was the ultimate gatekeeper of what it meant to actually be authentically Jewish. And the secular world has been feeling out of it. Let's just say it. And they were just feeling, I think, constantly, and now I think those voices are being more and more felt. The secular world was constantly feeling we are Jewish, but we are secular, and we are just the engine keeping the state running. And this huge gap, I must say, I feel it myself in my life. I'm someone that speaks openly about Portuguese Jewish history, Jewish identity, rediscovery of my heritage as a Jewish person. And sometimes I feel with secular audiences, I am suddenly not comfortable over there, because it's like I feel like I'm touching some fields that people don't get me anymore, because this is too much. It's becoming religious, or it's becoming okay, if that makes sense. So I think, the 2025, certainly this year, draft crisis changed everything, because after 2 years of an exhausting war, where certainly the secular, also the religious Zionists, which kind of stay there in the middle, trying to place themselves, I think I can fit myself inside this place of religious Zionism, if that, although I always like to distance myself from that type of very Israeli way of to put us inside boxes. I always say, are you at the TI, are you religious? Are you? I'm Jewish. And I think this is what it's all about. We are reaching this place of actually understanding that the Jewish identity needs to be much more wider in in the understanding of who we are, to be understood as a big family, that we are all in a spectrum, and the way that we position ourselves needs to be rethinked. And suddenly, yeah, we are just asking for equality in the burden. We are rethinking, in a way, this Jewish contracts. We are starting to say, oh, wait, is it the sacrifice in the front lines that so many of us were feeling during this war is considered less sacred than other layers of Jewish practice, like sitting in a yeshiva, like studying? Who gets to define who is the good Jew? Who gets to define who is the Jew? So this identity crisis, I think it's something that it's beyond the Knesset for a very long time. It's pushing us to a place that it's a massive personal journey for every Israeli person right now. Certainly it gets beyond the borders of Israel. It reaches the whole Jewish world. And we are moving away from a world where I think perhaps one group was holding kind of a monopoly of over Jewishness, and in the coming year, I think we are getting into the place of being Jewish is redefined by responsibility for the collective. I always describe the Jewish people as a family, a big family, and is that a family operates together, and that is the highest value. And if we are inside of it and we are part of the family, all of us have space there. So the Jewish identity is becoming much more enlarged in a way. It's messy, it's painful, it creates conflict, internal conflict. I think we all feel it. But I think ultimately it's very necessary for our national purpose, for our stability. I will even go further and say that I think all this is very necessary for our story being told out. Because this is the deep place where we'll find our capacity to actually explain ourselves, explain our connection to the land as our ancestral land, to have a common voice, to explain our story in a much wider way. And this confusion, even though we not spoke about it, but there's so many lies. One of the white supremacies, those ideas are all ideas that are coming from a lack of understanding of who are we, the Jewish people. And I always say, I will even enlarge more our understanding. Actually, if we look about in a perspective of a much more looking it from upper to the whole line of history, we actually see the period of Europe and the Holocaust as the last big event in terms of global or more wide anti-Semitism happening. And now here we are. Of course, there are many things happening in the middle, but we have these two big events. And if we look at it, and of course, if we look at the Holocaust as a model of all the other, we have other moments in history where Jewish anti-Semitism was very intense and expanding itself. I think one thing is happening right now. This is today, the event that we are having right now is perhaps the first time that a Jewish person, even on an individual level, actually has the capacity to speak globally, to tell the story, just say who he is. So that is bringing us to a whole new scenario where perhaps this idea of is Israel that needs to put in the effort and do it on a more national political movement to try to explain, or is it us, the Jews, that need to actually start to own who we are and know who we are and take this out? So all those things, I think in a way they are playing in the head of any Jewish person today.
Let me just tell the viewers that the poll will be open for another few minutes. I'll be very pleased if I can get your input. I'll give it another 5 minutes and then we'll discuss the results with the panel. Dave, as an American citizen as well, you're born in New York, as far as I remember. There's a comment here I would like to bring to your attention. There's someone is saying the American white evangelical nationalists are probably the vilest anti-Semitic based on my Facebook interaction. So that's his own experience. You might have a different understanding based on your own day-to-day time in social media. The hatred stems from centuries-old conspiracy theories. What's the reason? Would you like to get your thoughts on that?
I honestly, that's above my pay grade because I've been here for so many decades. And when I was growing up in America, I was secular, utterly assimilated. I was dumb as a bunch of rocks about anything Jewish. And so when people would say, you know, Jew hatred things against me, or in small towns that I grew up in, I didn't even realize they were talking about me. I thought, you're talking about the guy behind me? So my Jewish awareness of who and what I am and living in Israel, okay? Not just the religious aspect of it, as you were talking about, Hannah, but also the sense of peoplehood and shared history and a shared, not just traditions, but shared heritage and shared future. I'm looking at the question here. There's a lot of people that are vile. The thing with the ones on the right is that it's just so, they're both ignorant on the left and the right, but the right are just so old school, vile, and stupid about it. I mean, just utterly, your heart stops from how stupid some of the questions are and the presumptions, literally up into and including, well, don't you people have horns? On the left, you don't get that. On the left, you get the ideology. In America, you know, I remember someone I dated decades ago saying, well, but you people killed Jesus. And it's like, wait a minute, what? And I was secular at the time. I didn't even know what she was talking about. I knew nothing about Judaism. And it's like this came out of left field. And it's like, this is not a long-term relationship, I could tell you. I don't know where it's coming from. Some of it's theological. Some of it is old school Christian and Catholic teachings.
Dave, if you allow me, I have to jump in because this just made me laugh a lot. Like I'm also as a Portuguese, I heard that. I'm sure that also Vitor can connect. And I was just thinking, this is getting quite complicated because now, okay, so Jesus was a Palestinian. Yeah. Jews are white supremacists from Poland, but we also killed Jesus. So what is happening? Where does that happen?
And that was way before AI and internet.
Killed the Palestinian.
My own
where did that
cousin.
Happen? We are not from Israel. We are occupiers. So
my own cousin a decade ago,
how did we make that jump?
I'm
so that was
from,
hilarious
she believed
for me.
this
When I
a decade ago.
to...
Jesus was a Palestinian. And it's like, I don't even want to deal with this. And I grew up with this woman. And she's rooting for Hezbollah and Hamas. And she's held my children when they were small.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter. It's all about if their virtue signaling makes them feel noble. It doesn't matter that it has not a shred, a scintilla of connection to logic or sense. It just doesn't. There's some people here with some curious things. I'm going to ask about this. A greeting to you from the earth of the King of Jerusalem and more, and the lives of being islanders. What's up with that? Vitor? I mean, if you're going to ask a question, ask a thoughtful question. Don't come ranting at people you don't know. I mean, really, this is what we're talking about. Someone comes on here and they don't know me. They don't know us. They don't know our reality. They just come in and want to just spew. And if you want to vomit, go to the toilet, you know, but not here, unless you've got something thoughtful to say. And that's
it's not unusual. I have to say it's not unusual. I already banned a couple of individuals who are just making fool of themselves by writing comments that have no nobility, no reason, and they don't really belong in this place. So I need to put some filters, but somehow some people manage to get off the door.
It's good to know that, you know, there's a lot of people. You fly, you have honey. I'm a beekeeper. This is Neshika. This is our business. We're artisanal beekeepers here in the north. You get bees, and there's an old saying, a bee is not obligated to tell a fly that honey is sweeter than shit. You get the idea? A
I do.
beekeeper, the bee, a honeybee, is not obligated to explain to the fly why honey is sweeter than shit. And really, it's like
I don't think the viewers. Sorry, Dave. I don't think the viewers have the brain cells to understand your humor, and I'm not going to waste our precious minutes trying to shed some light on them.
I like that metaphor.
Yeah, with that and with your permission, I'm going to ban this person because it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to dehumanize people. That's not allowed here. So it's fine if you have different point of view, but we are not engaging in this kind of dialogues here. The poll just finished, and I want to discuss the results with you guys, and I'd like to get your take. So the question was, just to remind those who are not here at the start, what defined Israel in 25? Most 12% say the hostage crisis, 25% were leaning towards the war with Iran and the proxies, 38 mentioned the Jewish identity revival, and 25 were inclined to highlight media and anti-Semitism. So it seems that the majority said Jewish identity revival, although there was not much differences between the responses in this poll.
And these are people that are abroad, I understand. Is that correct? These are people that are not residing in Israel, as far as you know.
I don't know. The poll is open, so it's we can get all sorts of answers. Daniel, would you like to comment these results and maybe share what you think that defined Israel most in 2025? Are you there, Daniel?
I am. I'm here. Okay. So I'm trying to see let me see where you put the poll. Let me see where the last. Let's see what the last.
Can we see the poll? I'm sorry. Excuse my familiarity.
No, we can. Just need to do something with it.
What do I think defined Israel most in 2025?
Yeah, I'm not able to put it on the screen, but I will go through the numbers again. So just bear with me a few seconds. Where did I put it? Here. So there were four choices: the hostage crisis, the war with Iran, Jewish identity revival, and media and anti-Semitism. And it seems that most people defined Jewish identity revival as the larger event in Israel in 2025. There was not a big difference. So, but still, Jewish identity revival was elected number one. Are you somehow surprised with this result, Daniel, or you saw it coming?
No, I mean, look, I've lived in Israel for over 10 years. Even though I'm now in Portugal, I very much see it. I mean, I think as Hannah was saying, and I think as Dave would maybe agree, as well, we're probably bound to some interesting times in 2026 with the elections coming up and seeing how people will respond to the first elections after 7/7 or 7/10/23. And I think, unfortunately, for better or worse, we are going to see this kind of whole, what does it mean to be a Jew? What does it mean to be an Israeli coming up very, very soon when we have the elections? Because I think one of the things that will dominate probably the elections, again, what does it mean to be a Jew and is Israeli? What does it mean to share the actual burden? The idea, again, of surveys of, okay, this group says that they are the ultimate Jews. This one says that they have the right to control what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be a Judaism. This one says, X, Y, Z. But coming up with the elections, of seeing that the situation with the army now, and the situation with the draft is going to probably be something major. The army fatigue of so many people these days. I mean, people were literally going, Miluim. Okay, a little bit of time left. Miluim.
Son, stepson, and son-in-law have all just been on endless rounds of reserve duty.
Reserve duty. Miluim is reserve duty, so it's like you can't survive on that with the pittance that you're getting. People are supposed to have a parnasa, an ability to provide for themselves. And when you are Miluim, like you're not really able to provide for yourself. The wives and the daughters and the sons, they're all basically being raised without fathers because the parents, the dads are all in Miluim.
I have to admit, and I'm not Haredi, and I don't subscribe to any of that about staying away out of the army. I'm just on the other end of it. But I think it's not fair exactly in this context here between the four of us that there isn't someone to speak intelligently to that contention, just to be fair and even-handed about it. There is another side to it. I don't happen to agree with it, but there is another side that...
I agree.
Okay.
I agree with you as well. Definitely.
Hannah, would you like to make a comment on the poll results before we close?
I'm actually surprised if this is something, as Dave was questioning, if this is actually coming out of Israel. Is interesting, this perspective that perhaps people see it. I was expecting actually the hostages to get a type of a more bigger percentage. In a way I totally agree with it. As I said, I think that is the thing that it's going to guide us for 2026 in the Jewish world, certainly in Israel. This whole redefining of who we are, understanding that, reconnecting to our unity inside of it. So that it's for sure something that's marking 2025 and it's going ahead. If we are like in the last minutes, if I understood correctly, I think perhaps it will make some sense also to highlight some very positive things that I think can bring us a little bit of a positive note, because we spoke about trauma and we spoke about the difficulties. I think one aspect that we need to highlight actually is the national resilience of Israel. So many layers of the Israeli society. There is a lot of positives that I think all of us can identify. I am very hopeful for the national awareness to trauma and the need of addressing it in terms of mental health. That is certainly my psychology side speaking, but yeah, it's one of the aspects that I think is very interesting. I remember when I came to Israel to feel the layers of even generational trauma and how much it was unaddressed and it was not open. And I feel like, the extent of the trauma that we're having here, there's work to do, but I feel that there is an understanding. I see it also in Israeli society, and that is exciting. And another aspect that things need to be very, it has to be given the credit is the aspect of Israel being outstanding, continuing to shine in the world stage in so many layers. And although despite all the trauma, we are just, solidifying our R&D status. We just had NVIDIA, one of the biggest companies, opening here in Israel in a campus in Kiryat Tivon. We just had the biggest, actually the largest deal in Israel history of with the 32 billion acquisition of Google with the company cloud security of Wiz. So it's another layer. We have cyber security investments happening in Israel. And there is a new thing that, we were all this time, we were very focused on the high tech, Israel, the high tech. And right in this last year, it was a surge of deep tech dominance in Israel. For clarification, it refers to companies when the business models are more based in profound scientific discoveries or substantial engineering innovations. Is not high tech, is like something much more deeper, and we see it happening in Israel a lot, and we are thriving, and that is incredible despite of the trauma. And just to close up, I think another aspect that it might be interesting to speak about, and I was thinking about it, like how to frame it, but Well, we just had this announcement that I think is very interesting of the intention of Israel to become independent in terms of security. I feel this was not so much highlighted, but it is something very interesting because one of the aspects that has been very much the focus is this whole relationship, especially with our ally, with the USA, and how Israel is positioning itself with it, and the dependence, and the all American narrative seems like very much about it. And we see it pretty much everywhere. So Israel, just announced that it's going to put in the effort in all aspects, also financial, also of resources, to actually turn the military, the defense systems of Israel as much independent as possible, which is very interesting. And it's linked, I think, a little bit with what I was speaking before, that we just like put our focus in our brilliance of our minds, and we just keep doing it. I feel like while I was speaking, I'm just leaving aside so many medical innovations that just came out. I'm thinking
The
about
iron
the 3D
beam laser has been deployed across
Absolutely.
Israel.
Absolutely. So
Dave,
there's so much going
Israel's
on, and I find
relations
that
with
incredible.
Somaliland now, which is a major geopolitical move.
Absolutely, it was quite interesting to see. So there are things that are happening that I think it can bring us a little bit of hope and a sense of even of meaning, and of this is also identity, in my opinion, in terms of this is Jewish identity, in my opinion, as well. We could actually be crying people and, sinking into our trauma. We were never like that. And this is another aspect that needs to be highlighted a lot. And here we are again. It was very difficult. I think we all expressed here how much of a challenge it has been, and it keeps being. And we are starting the healing, and we cannot even finish, and no closure. We are waiting for our last hostage body to return. But on the parallel, we just keep our biggest purpose as a nation, as a people, to continue to bring up the best we can for this world to advance to better places. So I think that is
that's remarkable. I would say that's remarkable. Dave, can I get your quick review of the poll results?
Honestly, as an Israeli, I respect and accept and understand the focus of so many people outside of Israel about that, whether it's also Jew adjacent, as you might say, for Gentiles who are fascinated or believe that Israel and Jews are in the right, that it is a moral war of the West against barbarism. And I accept that. However, as an Israeli and as someone who's been involved and related to security issues intensely for the last 2+ years, unfortunately, the war with Iran, the ongoing war, and Iran's finger in so many pies of terrorism around the world, not just against Jews, but whether it's working to expedite terror attacks against Jews and Jewish targets, Israeli targets worldwide, whether it is their plans, and Netanyahu and Trump are talking about this probably as we speak now, about Iran's plans to develop not only ballistic missiles, but chemical and biological warheads instead of the nuclear program. They're not going to stop, and not going to stop until they are stopped. And I think that is going to be, going into 2026, a major, major situation. I don't want to say that the whole 12-day war with Iran back in June was a warm-up, because it was pretty horrific and awful as it was. But what's coming down is going to be much more, I'm afraid to say, and that this is just me, I don't want to say apocalyptic, but possibly more catastrophic for the world society than even Israeli society. If Iran is not stopped and the US goes after Iran and joins Israel, as they've been saying, as the Islamic supremacists around the world have been saying, Israel is the little Satan. America is the big Satan. We're just in the way. And if that's the case, we don't want anyone else to fight our battles, but you have to understand you're on the front line now too, all of you, wherever you are. It's a worldwide, this is World War III. And it just, it's cool with selfies and social media, but there's a war going on, and a little bit of sobriety and understanding. It's all right to say lots of Jews are wearing stars and they're going to Shabbat lighting candles. I don't know, honestly, and this is the dark side of Force and Dave. I don't know if that's going to last for people when they're really threatened, when it comes to their door, when someone comes and says, listen, you goddamn kike, get out of here, that they're going to keep singing Hava Nagila. I don't know that that's going to happen. Israelis will, because they'll punch back. That's why we have an army. I have American friends, staunch Jewish, pro-Israel supporters who believe they're just going to have more guns and fight them off. And it's like, that's never worked. That's never worked in Jewish history. And I think in the final analysis, a lot more people need to be here for what's coming down. That was it. That was my, I don't want to say aliyah pitch, not out of fear, out of self-respect, out of joy. I have a son, stepson, son-in-law, who all did long stretches of reserve duty. I did 20 years in the IDF. The idea of living simply a normative life as a Jew, not looking over your shoulder, is light years away from the experience abroad. And I wish more people would visit here and come here and plan to stay here so they could be part of that. There you go.
That's a message for people out there to take in seriously consideration as we approach the new year. Let's try to finish with a more positive note, and that's something I didn't have in mind, but it's a suggestion from one of our viewers, and why not take it on board? So this person is saying if we can share our favorite Jewish figure from history and our favorite book. So maybe you start with Daniel.
Oh, I mean, considering we just had Hanukkah, maybe I would say Yehuda Maccabi. Maybe also I would say someone like Otto Frank. Maybe that's more relevant these days, considering how much darkness the guy had to go through, losing his entire family, losing his daughters and his wife and every his friends in the annex, and being able to restart again and restart anew and honor his honor his daughters' legacy, and kind of showing that we had survived and we will continue to survive. As far as books, Jewish books, other books, I can't think of a book that I've read recently that I do like that I should come back to as of recent. But I'm gonna think of a book recently that I've read. The biography of forgot what his name was. Not the biography, but the story of forgot his name. The guy whose daughter who was just released a few months ago. Forgot his name. Who was just released a few months ago, and he released. Yeah, the hostage. I forgot his name. Oh my God, I feel horrible.
Eli Sharabi?
Eli Sharabi.
Was actually the book I had in mind.
No, I like thinking Eli Sharabi's book is
stealing Anna's ideas.
Just like to tell our audience, I'm going to actually hear Eli tomorrow. I hope so. And this is the reason why we're doing it today, kind of, right, Vitor? Because this was supposed to be tomorrow, but I just said I cannot because I'm going to hear Eli. So yeah, Eli Sharabi book, Hostage, I think right now is a must for anyone to actually understand the extent of the experience of our hostages, and also, because he has a resilience that is incredible that we can feel through his writing.
And I tell you, Hannah, I forgot to mention that in our WhatsApp conversation. When I asked you if he is translated into Portuguese, because I'm interested in translating that book to Portuguese myself and publish it. So If you can have a word with him tomorrow, let me know there is someone who can make it happen next year, which is just down the road. So I'm more than happy to translate it and make sure that his story is heard in Portugal and in Brazil and all sorts of Portuguese speaker communities across the world. And hopefully that's just the beginning. Other stories can be heard, because in those first-hand testimonials, they are powerful. Sometimes people don't really pay attention to political platforms because they think it's all biased, blah, blah, blah. But if it's someone's story, someone's experience, maybe there is an avenue to transmit the message in a very effective way. Hannah, would you like to describe or elect a Jewish figure as number one?
I must say
or
that
maybe two?
every time that I'm hearing the word Jewish figure, especially since the last 2 years, and this whole scenario where suddenly the whole Zionist story or the connection to Israel was framed inside Zionism as this political movement, and the whole story starts in 48. So I have this figure that it's very much present for me all the time as a Portuguese woman, which is called Dona Gracia Nassi, which was an incredible woman that lived much before the idea of Zionism as a political movement back in the day when Portugal in 16th century, was dealing with the difficulties of the Inquisition, and she just managed to get herself into the area of Tveria and negotiate with the Ottomans, and their whole purpose was to actually establish Jewish freedom in the land. So I think that type of figures are important, especially because they tell the continuous connection that the Jewish people had with Israel in prayers, in intention, in actually being here, because there were always families in Israel. I feel very connected to her because she was also in Portugal. She was also called Hannah. So it was things that I didn't know, but somehow, as much as I get connected to her as a figure that inspires me, I also feel a lot of connections that people see between me and her, and people jump with a lot of those type of connections. And yeah, I just grew some type of interest in her. There's a beautiful museum in Tveria where we can get more aware of all her life path, and what we just see is just a Jewish woman that understood that she had the power, the opportunity, the resources, and their whole purpose was to actually save Jews. And I was just like thinking about it and connecting with how Dave was speaking just a few minutes ago, with this experience of actually being here in Israel and realizing that there's nothing that can explain the sense of freedom that one feel as a Jewish person being here. And just to imagine that this was her intention. And we are speaking about in 16th century. So I think this whole concept of trying to frame us in 1948 is just erasing my grandmothers praying under their houses in Portugal, and the history of the Holocaust. All that is just being erased, which is important to bring to the story.
Yeah, before I pass the ball to Dave, I would choose a more literary figure. I go for Franz Kafka. He is my main reference when it comes to novels. So Franz Kafka will be my Jewish author, probably my favorite author. So not because he's Jewish, just happens to resonate with my understanding of the world, society, human interactions, and all that. I think he's quite to the point when it comes to tell the reader that there's much more beyond the scenes than we imagine. There's a whole bureaucratic monster in charge that is not always acting with the best possible intentions, and the individuals are being suffocated by the state or by the big powers out there. So I think Franz Kafka is one to read, and it's very hard for me to pick a book, but I would name a few: The Process, Castle, America, and also his diaries. All of these four, they are perfect vehicles for you to understand the role of individual in this in this wider society, which is not that different from Kafka's society in 19th century. Dave, your turn.
It's really that's really stumped me. At the moment, the kind of books that I would read are really not necessarily historical novels or Jewish subjects, except for the Old Testament and the Torah portion and the prophets. I'm a big reader, but it tends to things that are totally secular, and I read a lot of science fiction. I try to write a little science fiction. Speculative fiction, let's call it that, and thinking of the future and the past and a different, mixing things up and seeing things in a different way. So I can't say that I have a book that I've carried. The ones that I have carried over the years had things to do with mysticism, but grounded mysticism. As far as a Jewish leader or personage, oh, that's a toughie. I guess the way I'd answer that question is if someone asked me, what is the golden era of Judaism to you? And I would respond right now, this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, you can look at it from 1,000 different frameworks, but what we're living through, historic, biblical level experiences, all of us are enveloped in day to day, moment to moment, minute to minute. I think that's the personage that we talk about. We spoke much earlier on about what was it? I wanted to bring up that the arguments within Israel and within the Jewish world about the draft law, this and so on and so forth. There were 12 tribes. They were all very different. They fought with each other. The whole stories we've been reading in the Torah portion, including this last Shabbat, where Joseph reveals himself to his other brothers, the whole story there, for anyone who reads it, you don't have to look into psychology. You can read that and go, wait a minute, that's us.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it like, we have to be biblically. It's just that we're a people. That's the peoplehood of us. And embrace that. And don't look at it at arm's length. It's something you just take out once a week and put back on the shelf. That's what I would say. I'm sorry if that doesn't answer Skeptical Salamander's question exactly. Forgive me. I'm a newbie here.
You are a newbie, but the door is open for you in 2026 and perhaps for 2027, 2028. You are now part of the furniture officially, Dave. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to shine as much as Daniel because he's number one up there. But the competition is huge because Hannah is also now part of the crew, and we are here to stay. So as I said at the start, Israel in 2025 is not a slogan. It's a country carrying a hostage, fighting enemies, and don't hide their intent. And we can argue about policy, and perhaps we should. We can criticize certain decisions, and we must. But what we will not do is erase context, invert reality, or outsource moral judgment to mobs. This conversation was not about agreement. It was about refusing and rejecting lies loudly, calmly, and without hesitation. To those watching, understanding doesn't require obedience, but it does require honesty. And honesty right now is in short supply. So I want to thank you very much to my panel. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to meet you, and hope to meet more of our guests and audience members in future chats.
And I want to thank you for... Yeah, thank you. I want to thank the viewers for staying with us. This chat was supposed to be 60 minutes. It's nearly 2 hours. And I would say this is a positive outcome. And we will continue these conversations because silence has never protected the truth. Therefore, is not a valid option. So I see you next year and I wish everyone a great 2026. Have a good evening.